Oh, wait. Hello, guys. Hi, it's me, Bunny Rabbit Lives. Hello. Oh my goodness. So, I'm gonna talk with y'all for a little bit, and I'm gonna start reading Don't Let the Forest In. Okay? So, the thing is, I haven't finished this one for y'all, so I will be finishing that for y'all. And hopefully, hold on, I'm trying to get the chat up. Can't forget the chat. Let's see. Yeah, it's been a long time since I streamed this particular book. I know I did chapters 10 through 12 before. I was just thinking, it was such bad quality last time, so I decided, hey, I'm gonna read it again in a better quality so that, y'all can enjoy the story like I do. I actually love this story so much. I don't know if y'all have read this before, but I really wish that the author would make her books more accessible, because I went to Barnes and Noble a little bit ago and I could not find I forgot what that other book was, but the price of the freaking Hi, Mario Party. How are you doing? Are you doing good? Hi. You staying hydrated? The price of hardback cover books has increased drastically. Have y'all noticed that? That is crazy. Cause I found a book called, I think, The Monsters We Love or something like that. And it's about the same size as Don't Let the Forest In. And Don't Let the Forest In is $19.99 USD. And the book that I found that I liked was almost $30. I was like, yeah, no, that's gonna have to wait for the next paycheck. I'm good. Glad you see me here. Of course, of course. You came at the beginning. I'm able to see you because you came at the beginning. I'm gonna chat for a little bit and then I'm gonna read the book. So the way that I do this is I chat a little bit in the beginning and then I read the book, and when I finish it, if I'm not tired, then I chat a little longer, and then that's how it goes. Hi, how are you doing? See, I cannot read your name. I don't know. I want to say papaya, but I don't know. I hope y'all are all staying hydrated and safe. Actually, y'all remember how I explained that I had a what's it called? A sunburn? Y'all remember that? It's getting better. It's peeling. So, slowly, guys, don't forget your sunscreen ever. I'm gonna like advocate for that for y'all, so y'all don't have to go through the same thing I went through. I am. Thanks. Thank you. No, thank you for stopping by. But yes. And also, I'm gonna try to stream more than twice a week as well. Just because, I do have a job that's gonna be a little harder, but it's gonna be doable, hopefully. So yeah. If y'all enjoy this as much as I do, feel free to stop by. And by the way, I've started eating chocolate again. I don't know why, but I have. And actually, it's pretty good. Guys, I don't know what made me stop eating chocolate, but something made me stop eating chocolate. I don't know what it was, so don't judge me. I know a lot of people are chocolate lovers. I think I did tan, not gonna lie. I think I did. No. I think my right arm is tanned. I mean, with enough sun protection, it could go away, right? It's not permanent, right? right? Hopefully not. But yeah. Alright, guys, I'm gonna start reading. Thank you for stopping by. Okay. He curled under the blankets in the dark, his spine to the wall, listening to Thomas breathe across the room. The electric clock perching on a haphazard stack of textbooks flicked to 2 a.m. He watched the dark melt down the ceiling and wished Thomas would fill the silence between them with a whispered, "What happened? I'll take care of it for you." Andrew hadn't explained what had happened in the bathroom the day before. Not that his supposed best friend had been around to tell. 2 seconds before lights out, he had slid into their room and dived into bed. And by then, Andrew felt too small to speak. It was all over the school anyway. The boy who'd had a total mental breakdown over an alleged senior prank and landed in the nurse's office for the rest of the day. He decided that Thomas hadn't heard instead of. Oh, my Tamagotchi left his little lion toy. That's cute. Okay. He decided that Thomas hadn't heard, instead of accepting the possibility he didn't care. Everything felt wrong. The way the darkness bled like ink before his eyes. The ghosted memory of things touching him as if they wanted him, owned him. He squeezed his eyes shut. "Thomas?" The only response was the sound of bed springs shifting as he rolled over and pulled the comforter over his head. And suddenly Andrew couldn't stand it any longer. A frostbitten anger surged up in his throat, and he flung off his blankets and punched the desk lamp on. "Thomas, wake up and listen." Thomas wasn't in bed. Andrew squinted in the lamp's golden blaze and scrubbed his eyes, because he'd seen him a second before, heard him moving, breathing. But the bed across from him lay empty, comforter and sheets scrunched up, and when Andrew crossed the room to feel the mattress, no heat remained. Something had been there. He had the crawling urge to look under the bed. No, no. Andrew dug his fingers through his hair and pulled, hissing through clenched teeth. He wasn't making this up. A cool breeze slipped under the window. Papers rustled on the floor, and crumpled balls of Thomas' half-done drawings rolled around like tumbleweeds. Andrew would have to wait till tomorrow to confront him. Except, why was he always the one who had to be patient and quiet until someone felt like listening to him? Maybe he should force Thomas to listen. Andrew's jaw clenched. Surely he deserved that much. He snatched up a sweatshirt and tennis shoes and shoved the window all the way open. He bit his lip until it felt raw and swollen as he climbed down and landed in the rose bushes. He still wore pajama shorts, the cool evening biting at his bare legs. But this wouldn't take long. None of them would want to linger after Andrew busted them in the woods. Thomas and Dove. Dove and Thomas. Mouths against skin and shirts slipping from shoulders and the leafy green knobs of the forest's fingers tangled in their hair. They could do him the barest courtesy of being honest about it. He wiped at his eyes with the sleeve of his lumpy sweatshirt. It was time to change the story. At least, he thought. As he ran across the sports field with the moonlight turning his hair silver, he still wasn't afraid of the dark. He climbed the fence and dropped down the other side without a sound. The night folded over him as he walked into the woods. As soon as the trees stretched up tall and black on every side, he turned on his parents' He turned on his phone's flashlight and stomped around until he found the dirt track to their ancient white oak. He decided to be noisy. No way did he want to surprise anyone. Everything inside him had turned brittle. He couldn't fit into a love story the way he was meant to, the way the stories were always told. No one would see a point in kissing him and leaving it at that, but he didn't think he wanted anything more. Sticks cracked underfoot, and he plowed through the leaves until he sounded like a petulant storm. But the tiniest worm of doubt wriggled through his stomach. Was this even a good idea? If there was something in the school, it could be out here too. Cloven hooves, breath like wormwood, rot. I'm not afraid, he said to the trees. Nothing bad has ever happened in the forest. Leaves whipped up around his ankles, and a single word slipped into the darkest places between the roots and thickets. Liar. Then the wind died suddenly. A switch shut off. Silence pushed down on his shoulders as if it wanted to drive him deep into the earth. He stood still, flashing his phone light around. Thomas? Dove? Thomas! The silence breathed out. Goosebumps rippled up his arms. He turned in a slow circle, his light following in a smooth arc. The beam lit up a dark lump, leaning against a pine, but he moved it past before registering something had been there. A person hiding behind the tree? He slashed his light back toward the shape. Nothing. Just a single pine shot up to the sky. If you jump out at me, Andrew said, his voice surprisingly steady, I will hit you so hard you'll bleed, Thomas Rye. I'm sick of this. Of you, he wanted to add. No one stepped out. He clenched his teeth and spun back to continue down the rugged little path. Something huge stood before him. Andrew cried out, nearly dropping his phone. The light beam skittered everywhere before settling again on the thing before him. Not Thomas. Not Thomas. It reached out a hand, a claw. Its arm was bone, flesh hanging off in rotting ribbons, skin pulled so tight over a naked chest that ribs punctured through. But its face, vines poured out of its mouth, eyes, ears, growing and writhing. Blood slipped between its lips, and as another vine broke out of its flesh and spooled toward the ground. Its feet were hooves. Andrew ran. He flung himself forward with a cry so terrified it didn't sound like him. This wasn't real. This wasn't happening. The thing followed. He could feel it coming up behind him, a weight so heavy and intense as it came fast, fast, faster, faster, faster. His flashlight jittered so hard he couldn't see anything. The path was too small, too rough. He tripped, kept going, tripped again, shoved his feet as roots and rocks cut his hands. Panic blossomed in his gut and rose up his throat in choking waves. A claw ripped forward. He felt it, his sweatshirt tearing as bright pain slashed across the back of his shoulder. He plummeted to his knees, scrambling forward even before he hit the ground. His phone flew out of his hand. The monster kept coming. The weight of it bore down, growing larger as it blocked out the whole forest above Andrew. It took hold of his leg and slowly, languorously dragged him backward. Claws cut into his skin. Andrew screamed and kicked out. The thing was almost all the way on top of him now. He would not get through this. He knew it. The vines falling from the monster's mouth pulsed forward, tips flickering toward Andrew's face, searching for somewhere to spear into and grow. His eyes, his ears, his mouth, he shook so hard with fear that he forgot to struggle. Don't scream. He had to keep his mouth closed. Don't let it in. Then something slammed into the monster. Andrew felt it more than saw it. The weight suddenly shoved to the side as the monster toppled to its knees, vines retracting from Andrew. It let out a roar that shook the trees to their roots. Andrew scurried backward on all fours. His phone light must have shut off because all he had was the blackness. Pebbles bit his hands, his knees, underbrush clawing at his shirt. He couldn't stand up. He couldn't get his legs underneath him. He couldn't. Hands grabbed his shoulders and hauled him up. Soft hands, warm and freckled and human. A face shoved into Andrew so close he felt someone else's eyelashes on his cheek for one breath of a second. Then he understood the yelling. Get up! Get up! Andrew! God damn it! Stand up! Behind them, the monster roared. Andrew allowed himself to be dragged to his feet, but he didn't let go of the hands holding him. He clutched Thomas like he was the only thing real in a world of nightmares. Thomas grabbed his hand and jerked him forward until they were running together down the narrow track, stumbling but gaining speed. His fingers were sweaty and kept slipping. Thomas didn't let go. In his free hand he held a spike, metal like the ones staking rose bushes near the dorms. But that meant he'd brought it into the forest on purpose. The monster lunged after them, its vines shooting outward to snatch at their shirts, their elbows, their ankles. Thomas yanked Andrew to take a hard right, and they plunged into underbrush of thorny brambles. Andrew had no air to speak, and his mouth tasted like the forest. Thomas said, "Jump!" just in time, and Andrew had enough sense to make the leap. Then they were falling. Terror filled him as they toppled. It was only a few feet, but they slammed hard to the ground, and Andrew crashed to his knees, pulling Thomas on top of him. They must have tumbled into a small gully, tree roots making a natural overhang. They barely fit under the ledge, but with legs pulled up to their chins and their backs to the wall of dirt, they had a second to catch their breath. Thomas wrapped one arm around Andrew's neck and closed a hand over his mouth. His fingers dug into Andrew's jaw so hard there would be thumbprint bruises there tomorrow. The forest had gone silent. They were pressed so tight together, hearts pounding and chests heaving in rhythm. Everything smelled of mud and sweat and blood. Dirt crumbled above them and pattered into their hair. They could hear the monster standing above the overhang, sniffing the air. Thomas did not loosen his hand over Andrew's mouth, but inexplicably he turned and pressed his lips against Andrew's filth-streaked forehead. It tasted my bad. It lasted half a second. A kiss, but not. Comfort, but useless. The promise, I'm here, without words. Andrew breathed out, shuddering. Then the monster jumped. It landed in front of them, in a shower of dirt and snapped roots. Its vines shot forward as it roared, reaching for the boys locked together. They slammed into Andrew's first, clawing up his body, and he couldn't scream because of Thomas' hand. But then Thomas let go. He lunged forward to run. He didn't grab for Andrew, didn't reach back, didn't try to save. Andrew flung his arms over his face and folded to the forest floor. The horrible weight of this realization bloomed through his heart, that Thomas would escape alone and Andrew would crumble. And didn't that just fit them perfectly? Except then Thomas howled. He came up behind the monster and swung his garden spike, slamming it against the monster's skull. The crack echoed through the forest. Thomas swung again and again, as if it were a baseball bat and he wanted nothing left but splinters. The monster reeled backward, vines jerking away from Andrew, slashing out toward Thomas instead. Andrew stayed where he was, curled among the leaves. Only the thinnest rays of moonlight piercing through the canopy lit the battle. Thomas smashed the spike again and again into the monster's head. Bones cracked, vines lunged toward his face, tried to catch his arms and pin them, but Thomas moved in a violent kaleidoscope, impossible to catch. Then the monster slipped and went to its knees. Thomas gave a gravely cry of feral triumph as he shoved the spike into the monster's eye. He put all his weight into it, driving it deeper and deeper as the monster went down screaming. Blood splattered across Thomas, murky and black. He didn't stop until the thing lay on its back, the garden spike through its skull and driven into the earth below. The screaming stopped. Its hooves twitched a few times. Then silence fell in a dense velvet curtain across the world. There was nothing but this. Andrew curled with his knees to his chest, watching in numb horror. Thomas forcing his fingers to release the spike as he slowly straightened. He flexed his hands and looked at the blood smeared up to his elbows. He toed the motionless monster and then took a step away from it, then another. He wiped his mouth, smearing blood across his cheek. Finally, he looked at Andrew. "Please don't hate me," Thomas whispered. They gently lowered the fairy prince's body into a glass coffin, leaving bloody fingerprints smudged on the case. His chest had been caved in from from battles fought and lost, and they'd filled the space between his ribs with flowers. Even now the flowers grew, blossoming as they drank the last of his blood. The prince's silver tears fell like rain upon the coffin. True love's kiss should wake him, but she had tried 7 times and nothing had happened. Behind the princess stood her brother, a poet with soft lips and soft moss for hair. He whispered, "Let me try," but no one heard. They buried the fairy prince alone. By evening, the flowers had grown over his whole face. Alright guys, I'm gonna take a break because I think I forgot to give a disclaimer that I was gonna have a horror read today. Sorry about that, guys. I will put it in the comments. Roast beef? Nah. You know, I don't go What do you mean? What do you mean, dork? Alright guys, let me type this down. With a This is one of my favorite books, guys. I'm just taking a little break here to like let y'all know. Feel free to chat amongst each other. There y'all go. By the way, it's been raining all day today. There we go. Guys, I have pinned the comment. It explains everything. I am taking a small break from reading. If y'all have any questions about the book or for me, let me know. I will give y'all like 5 minutes and then I'll continue. Y'all stay hydrated. I do have to take a break between chapters because this is a very intense book to read out loud. But yes, I like that the protagonist is not like a cookie cutter kind of character, you know, that is like everywhere. It's like a guy who thinks he likes a guy, but also like doesn't want anything to do with that kind of thing. Like, you know what I mean? Not like physically. And so he has like conflicting ideals and beliefs because, you know, obviously he's exploring himself. This is a YA novel, so it goes through themes of self exploration, growing, and so if you're under the age of 18, I do not recommend watching this live, or I suggest asking your parents for permission beforehand if you are under 18. I would say don't stick around for the rest of this book if you are under 18. Okay? Don't do it. Especially if horror scares you. But and also like if you are not okay with seeing boy boys like boys or like boys confused about like, you know, their sexuality or whatever, then I suggest you don't watch this if you're under 18. Okay? Ask your parents. I warned y'all, okay? Stay hydrated. Grab your tea if you're older. And we can chat about the book once I'm done, or every other chapter. I'm at 11 now. And don't worry, guys, I will share the playlist with the book that I'm reading because I did start this beforehand. Um, and it will be my community posts. And in the future, I will remember to let you guys know that I will be streaming reading and stuff. But feel free to catch up. And also, yeah, like I said, if you don't like horror, you're probably not gonna like this book. I love this book. It's one of my favorites. And I'm trying to finish it for y'all because I feel like it's very important. Like the message that it's sharing. And not only that, but the writer is an autistic lady, and also you know, I said why not support her, you know what I mean, and she writes great. I love the book, like I said. So yep, with that being said, if y'all have no questions, or if y'all would like to chat, then I will continue. All right, chapter 11. 1, 2, 3. Thomas pulled Andrew to his feet and led him out of the forest. They walked slow, adrenaline draining with each step and leaving them with bones of water. Andrew still clung to Thomas's hand, their fingers laced and palms slick with blood and mud. One of them had forgotten to let go. Climbing the fence felt impossible, but they forced themselves over. Andrew ripped his sweatshirt on the jagged wire at the top, but Thomas slipped and sliced his arm. He looked at it with dull, unfocused eyes, like he didn't even feel it. They were almost back to the dorms before Andrew realized he was in the lead. He was the one dragging Thomas, forcing him on, holding him together. Since when did their places switch? When they'd climbed back through their window, their room didn't seem real. Andrew touched his mouth, his eyes, as if phantom vines still dug at his skin. Maybe he was the one who had stopped being real. He was falling outside of himself. Thomas sank down on Andrew's bed and stared at his shaking hands. His nails were bitten to stubs, blood tracing the creases in his muddy palms. person. Sorry, I'm reading. I pinned the comment. Andrew stopped. Oh, my bad. Andrew dropped down beside him, their bodies jammed tight together, hip to hip. How bad are you hurt? I should be asking you that. Thomas' voice cracked around the edges, as if he'd been screaming too long. Maybe he had, before Andrew got there. It got my shoulder, I think. Andrew felt nothing, so it didn't seem important. This isn't real. Thomas let out a laugh that withered into a sob. They're not always that big. The smaller ones have bones of clay and glass, and they're easier to break. I have to kill them every time, because if I don't, they climb the fence and get into school. They could attack anyone, go anywhere. I have to stop them. Thomas peeled off Andrew's bed and dragged out a cardboard box full of bandages, disinfectant swabs, butterfly tape, even a bottle of mild painkillers, a survival kit. He ripped open packages with his teeth with the familiarity of routine. You do this every night. Andrew sat frozen. You never told me, he choked. We have to tell someone. We have to. No. Thomas looked up, and his eyes blazed with such vehemence that Andrew flinched. He'd nearly said, We have to tell Dove. But maybe they shouldn't. Part of him sat there, melting in shameful relief that he had been wrong about Thomas and Dove meeting in the forest. Wrong thinking Thomas hated him. He was so relieved that a manic smile tugged at his lips. Sure, monsters were real and wanted to rip out their throats. But at least he still had his best friend. Thomas slumped back on the bed, swiveling to sit cross-legged. Take off your shirt. A ripple went through Andrew's stomach. He obeyed, wincing when fabric stuck to bloodied skin. When he tried to see the damage, Thomas took hold of Andrew's chin and forced him to look away. Then he carefully swabbed Andrew's shoulder with one hand while the other pressed over his collarbone, which lit him up in a horribly beautiful way. They'll come after you now, Thomas said. They've tasted your blood. They already did, Andrew said. Yesterday in the bathrooms. I saw the hooves. It was hunting me. Thomas made a tight, vexed sound. They grow out of the forest every night, and I used to think they disappear when the sun rises. But they don't. If I don't kill them all, they'll go after anyone I hang around. That's why your parents, Andrew breathed. Everything made sense. Thomas' voice shook so much he kept stopping to swallow. That day, before school started, the fight, the neighbors heard. It was a monster. I hid. I listened to my parents fight it, but they're always high these days, and I didn't think it was real. How could it be goddamn real? I took a knife from the kitchen, but then I saw what it looked like and I ran. I just ran. His fingers traced the edges of Andrew's cut shoulder before he tapped on the bandage. Pain had arrived, white, hot, and throbbing, but Andrew still didn't care. Thomas's misery had filled the whole room, and they drowned in it together. I killed my parents, Thomas said, soft and sick and terrified. Stop it. Blood roared in Andrew's ears. These monsters aren't your fault. You didn't ask them to attack. Didn't I? Thomas went to his desk and dug out a sketchbook. He pulled a loose sheet from between the pages, smoothing out the wreckage of crumbled edges. Then he flung it on the floor. It was a drawing Thomas had snatched away on the roof, the seventh son staring into a wishing well, while a monster with a torn-off wolf's head ate his parents in the background. Thomas's voice stretched with anguish. That's what it looked like. The monster in my house. Just like this. Down to the stitching at its throat. And this. He tore a drawing off the wall so hard the corners were left behind. Andrew yanked it from Thomas's bloodied hands and stared. Hooves and corpse skin, and vines exploding from its mouth and ears and eyes. The monster from the woods. When did you... He stopped. I don't know. Last year sometime? Thomas dug fingers through his hair and paced between their beds. It's not a coincidence. I'm doing this. I'm creating them. Andrew couldn't hold the shape of this. He stared at the drawing until it blurred, and then he ripped it up and let the pieces scatter like charcoal confetti. I shouldn't tell you this. It'll make it worse. Thomas wrapped arms around his stomach. They'll kill you like they want to kill me. I can't bear it if they take you from me too. I need... I'm so goddamn tired. It's every night, okay? Every night. I go into the woods and fight them so they don't climb the fence. But I can't make them stop. I can't. Thomas would wake up the whole dorm and he kept spiraling like this. If their counselor burst in here, there'd be no way to explain the blood, their dirt-streaked faces, or why Thomas was ranting about monsters. Andrew grabbed Thomas's shirt and pulled him back down to the bed to cut off the frantic pacing. He cupped the hand over Thomas's mouth, nothing like the bruising way his own face had been gripped in the forest. This was delicate and tentative, and full of want. Thomas went quiet. Words seemed weak and meaningless when drawings could wake up monsters, so Andrew didn't ask. He peeled Thomas's shirt off and searched for the worst wound, a slash right over his ribs. Blood still oozed sluggishly from torn flesh. Andrew pushed Thomas's shoulder into the shoulder until he collapsed back onto the pillows. He lay there, chest moving too fast while Andrew cleaned his cuts. Where Thomas had been brusque and efficient, Andrew worked with a feather-light touch. He splayed his fingers over Thomas's heaving stomach until the dry sobs slowed. They'd never had so much bare skin between them, so much blood. Andrew's heart felt bruised and weary, but he made his voice steel. I'll help. Hi, I'm good, Evelyn. Sorry, I'm reading. Thomas flung an arm over his eyes. You know how there's an old boarded-up well in the groove behind my house? I can't even tell the cops to check in there because it's as good as a confession. And if I start raving about monsters, they'll still lock me up. I get it. But there has to be an answer, a reason this is happening. But you can't keep pushing me away. Andrew swabbed the cut harder, and was rewarded with a hiss from Thomas. I can't protect you and fight monsters too. It stung, but it was true. Andrew had been worse than useless tonight, but he'd been in shock. He'd do better next time. You can't figure out why this is happening? Andrew said, steady. While you're fighting monsters with no sleep. Let me help. Thomas kept his arm over his eyes and said nothing. For a vicious moment, Andrew thought about slipping his fingers into Thomas's cup, taking hold of his rib and breaking it, pulling the soft, crumbling bone from his chest and sewing it into his own. They'd be forever together, rib against rib, fused in gore and bone and adoration. Andrew squeezed his eyes shut. That wasn't him. He was infected by this night of woken nightmares and ebbing adrenaline, and the starved desperation of wanting Thomas. Thomas. Only Thomas. He taped the bandage over Thomas's wound and disinfected all the other cuts he could find. Are you scared of me? Thomas' voice was small. No, Andrew said. We'll stop this. Everything that starts has a way to end. Thomas fell asleep in Andrew's bed. Andrew thought about curling up beside him and seeing if their bodies fit together like they'd been carved from the same oak. Instead, he stared out the window until dawn blushed the sky and let the truth of last night sink into his bones. Horrors always felt less real in the daylight, but this wouldn't go away. Andrew hadn't asked it in the dark, but the question burned him. Who was Thomas Rye that he could make monsters? What was he? Even though he'd slept for barely 2 hours, Andrew woke Thomas at the first alarm. They couldn't draw attention to themselves. They had too much to hide. Somehow Andrew had been shoved into playing the part of the steady one. That should be Dove's place, the one who spoke sense to balance Thomas's fiery impulses and Andrew's panic spirals. She should be the one drawing up a flowchart for how to defeat monsters and still pass their classes. But he was forbidden to tell her. So it was Andrew who got them dressed and through breakfast, where they drank too much black coffee and ate almost nothing before stumbling to their first classes. It was like Thomas had been holding himself together with string and scotch tape, and now he'd crumpled. The walls he'd put up had been punched through, and he didn't have the energy to rebuild. All day he hovered around Andrews, stood too close to him, found every excuse to touch him with anxious fingers. It felt like he'd crawl inside Andrew's shirt if he could, stew himself inside Andrew's skin. Usually Andrew was the one who lay in shattered pieces, needing to be put together, so this reversal at least felt fair. He owed it to Thomas. Because Thomas, beautiful and harrowed and magical, was falling apart. They sat in calculus when it happened. Andrew had opened his textbook before he noticed Thomas gripping his desk so hard his knuckles had gone white. He hadn't brought a single pencil or notebook into class. He stared straight ahead, his eyes blank as his breathing grew faster and faster. Panic attack. Andrew's heartbeat skipped in sympathy, and he leaned over his desk. Thomas. Professor Clemens strode in, calling out an enthusiastic greeting. He was white and much younger than their previous teacher, and always wore dashing three-piece suits with thick glasses and a charming smile. On day 1 of school, everyone decided he was hot. On day 2, they rearranged their opinion. They all hated him. Clemens demanded perfection. Perfect work, perfect focus, perfect attitudes, perfect respect toward him. Anything less, he mocked. He singled out students with jibes that burned like acid, made people do their work on the whiteboard and ridiculed them the entire time, and cheerfully gave out Fs if anyone so much as spoke back. It was a power, Andrew knew. Some people could get drunk on it. Good morning, students, Clemens said, bright and energetic. He slid off his tweed jacket and rolled his shirt sleeves. We have a lot to do today, so I'm glad to see everyone in their seats. That pop quiz last week was fun, right? Warm congratulations to Mr. Emerson and Miss Obara for full marks. Mr. Murphy got 3 out of 25, which none of us are surprised about. Miss Sato didn't show her work, so I'll assume she cheated and marked accordingly. His smile grew wider as student shrank. Ah, Mr. Rai, who loves to nap in my class. Today's question is for you. He picked up a whiteboard marker and wrote fast across the board. Does Thomas Rai know how to read? A few nervous titters rippled through the class. Andrew's throat knotted so hard he couldn't swallow. The only reason he didn't get singled out was because Dove did his homework. Thomas didn't even notice he was today's target. He stared at his desk, each breath low and ragged, still coming too fast. Clemens tapped the marker on the board. Judging from your mark of a big fat 0, I'd say the answer to this problem is no. But we show our working class, don't we, Mr. Rai? Come to the front and redo question 4. Thomas didn't move. Clemens had his back to the class, writing briskly across the whiteboard. Pens out, everyone. Let's play a game. Slowest to find the answer to this problem is next at the whiteboard. The class buckled down to work without a sound. Wake up, Mr. Rai, or you'll be spending the whole class up front with me. Andrew leaned over and tried to pry Thomas's fingers off his desk. Hey, you have to slow your breathing. I can't. His lips hardly moved. I can't. Thomas was in pain. Nothing else mattered. Andrew shoved out of his desk, his chair clattering. Half the class turned to stare. Andrew framed Thomas's face with his hands to focus his attention. Look at me. This is calculus, not drama, boys, Clemens said in a mocking, sing-song voice. Andrew whirled, his cheeks flaming, and a go to hell stuck in his throat. He needs some air. Clemens flicked Thomas a mocking once-over. Sure, why not? Why don't we all just skip class today because we don't feel like working? Who cares about grades? Who cares about college? Andrew yanked Thomas from his desk and towed him out of the room. He moved like a puppet, strings cut and tangled around Andrew's fists. Clemens opened the door for them. You're asking for a failing mark, both of you. Once you've finished your little break, head over to the principal's office and let the secretary know you skipped for fun. Theatrics don't work on me. The classroom door shut behind them. In the hall, the world felt still and gray. The air tasted of dust, motes, and paper, of the muffled weight of being alone. Thomas started to sink to the floor, but Andrew took fistfuls of his shirt and shoved him against the wall, hard. Thomas flinched, but he was still hyperventilating. Stop it! Andrew pressed against him and dug his fingers into Thomas's collarbone. I'm dying. Thomas' mouth trembled. It's a panic attack. I have 1,000 of them a day. But you can't. You're the strong one. Thomas's whimper came low in his throat, raw and fissured. I can't keep doing this. Not every night. I can't. You're not alone anymore, all right? I swear it. Thomas' eyes closed. What if it's your sketchbook? Andrew said. It could be cursed. You have to stop drawing. I did stop. The only thing I've drawn in ages is a stupid fruit bowl for art class. But I have to pass art. It's my one thing. Rookwood will expel me if I fail every class. I'll lose you. I'll lose... Andrew didn't want to hear him say Dove. Didn't want that reminder of who Thomas truly wanted to comfort him in this moment. You won't lose me, Andrew said fiercely. Thomas's tie had come undone, his blazer abandoned. old paint staining his cuffs. He looked a mess, mussy and unhinged. When Andrew let go, Thomas slid down the wall and sat there, while Andrew stood over him, his legs a protective wall around Thomas's crumpled body. Maybe it's the pen you use? Andrew's mind powered into a frenzied whirl. Or you bled onto the drawings, and the blood, like, maybe it invoked something? It didn't. Thomas played with the cuff of Andrew's trousers. I don't even think while I draw sometimes. I'll listen to music and draw random shit. It doesn't mean anything. I just like monsters. Well, used to. Back when their teeth were paper and not bone. Andrew pressed his knuckles to the wall. Let's destroy your sketchbook in the forest tonight. You're not coming. I'm coming, Andrew said. Thomas didn't argue again. He wiped at his face with the back of his hand and let out a shaky breath. His breathing evened out, but he made no move to get up. Andrew didn't care, not while they still touched. He craved Thomas's affection, with an intensity that left him dizzy. If he never had more, he had this. It was almost worth being ripped apart by monsters. Dang, this guy's crazy, but that's okay. I like it. Hey, Clifton, how are you doing? I'm taking a little break, guys, so we can stay hydrated. If anyone has questions, if anyone wants to chat a little bit, let me know. This book is intense to read. And honestly, I think my favorite part of it is like the friendship between the guys. Not only that, but I really like the way that they complement each other, you know? Because Andrew used to be really anxious, and then he became like the stone, you know, that held his friend when he was struggling. Which I think is really great and really interesting. And I can't wait to see how their friendship develops as the book goes on. She has more standalone novels that I would love to read. C.G. Drews is really creative, and I do love her portrayal of friendships in this book. And it's like, it's not even graphic, at least not in my opinion. There is a lot of like monster visualization in this book, and a bit of cursing, and also like, I don't know, maybe I should have done like a trigger warning before starting to read it and stuff. I will remember to do that on the next live. But yeah, guys, there's definitely a site. I think I will go to the writer's page on TikTok and get that and put it into the link in the description after this live stream, so that y'all can look into it if y'all are over 18. Or 17, I think. 17 to like 20 something for Y, but yeah. I really enjoy this book. I don't know about y'all, but I am super happy to be continuing this. Alright, guys. I will start reading once again. They waited till midnight. Andrew sat in bed, textbook on his lap, but his notebook open over the top as he panned the first lines of a new story. It started with a wicked creature who carved tears off faces to sate his thirst, until he chose a victim who clutched a knife made of antler bone and used it to slash the wicked creature's face instead. Writing felt selfish, especially when Thomas lay on his own bed, tapping a pencil against his lips and staring at the ceiling, forbidden to draw. This had to be part of why he'd severed himself with such ferocious finality from Andrew over the last few weeks. Andrew would have noticed the lack of charcoal smudged sleeves and paint in his hair. This had to be a bitter withdrawal. Thomas sighed. Thomas sighed for the thousandth time and drummed the pencil against the wall. His old drawings stared back, bone crowns and monsters' teeth and wicked forests and the curve of a poisonous apple. I have till Thanksgiving to decide on my end-of-year art project, Thomas said dully. Or, I'll fail. I've convinced Miss Poppy I have artist block, and she's being nice about it, which just makes me feel even more like shit. Andrew didn't answer for a long time. What's the witching hour? I don't know. 2 a.m., isn't it? Or 3? Do the monsters get worse then? Stronger? It could be witchcraft. Thomas chewed the end of the pencil. You believe in that? Andrew closed his notebook. You've kind of you've kind of warped reality. I'm pretty sure we have to believe in everything now. Thomas bit the pencil so hard it cracked. He lay there with a mouth full of splinters for so long, Andrew nearly shook him, terrified he'd try to swallow them. Finally, Thomas got up, picking splinters from his lips. I guess they appear around the witching hour every night. But I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is me. They walked into the woods side by side, so close their shoulders brushed, when they reached a winding, overgrown track, too thin for two. Thomas went first. He kept glancing over his shoulder, reaching back with a hand to touch Andrew and be sure he was safe. In the dark, Thomas's eyes turned to pools of black, the fear in them a living thing. The forest should have scared Andrew too, but it didn't. Last night he'd been terrified out of his mind, but he felt different now, solid and firmly inside himself as he walked. This time he'd worn jeans and boots, and tucked on a wickwood hoodie against the cool September air. Both he and Thomas carried flashlights and spikes they'd dug from the garden. Dirt still crumpled at the points. The gardener would be pissed to find the new rose bushes robbed, but the boys didn't have much choice. Andrew carried the sketchbook. Thomas didn't want to touch it. We need better weapons. Andrew's voice felt too loud. Do you know what would happen if they found so much as a butter knife in my room? Thomas said. You didn't see how the cops questioned me. They think I'm a murderer. Andrew stumbled on a knotted root, and Thomas spun around to steady him, taking a little too long to let go. He swallowed and kept walking. If I get expelled, I'll never see you again. I don't even know who'd take me. My grandparents are in a retirement village. My aunt hates my mother and won't have anything to do with me. I'd take you. Andrew swung his flashlight around the trees. I'd pack you into my carry-on. Like, okay, I'm short, but not that short, Andrew snorted. Thomas narrowed his eyes, but then Andrew smiled. The glower melted off Thomas's face. This was good. Keep him talking. Keep his focus off his all-consuming dread. I need to find my phone, Andrew said. Do the monsters come to you, or do you have to find them? They find me. It's better not to hide. His voice sounded moth-eaten. I always want to get it over with. I'm so goddamn tired. Andrew tucked the sketchbook under his arm and turned in a slow circle. His flashlight carved a grove through the blackness and revealed nothing but trees. No monsters. Night sounds twisted around their bodies as the wind rustled through the trees and crickets thrummed. An owl called to the dark. to the dark. Thomas jumped, but Andrew took a deep breath of moss and damp leaves, of the vivid green life of the forest pulsing under their feet. It felt like they'd made the monsters up, a shared fever dream. Something bit at Andrew's neck and he slapped it. The only things attacking me are bugs. How are you not scared? Thomas asked softly. Andrew scuffed leaves around, looking for his phone. I don't know. I'm crazy? Thomas' tone came hard. Don't say stuff like that. Andrew sighed. I think it's because everything wrecks me. Everything. I'm so freaked out all the time and there's no reason. Just my brain imploding on itself. But monsters are something we can kill. And I think I like that. He let out a flat laugh. My brain is so broken. It was easier to make it a joke than close his eyes and think about the hundreds of times he'd been so anxious he'd ended up in tears, vomiting and frantic. Dove would hold him and say, Tell me what's wrong. How can I help if you won't say what's wrong? Andrew didn't know. Life didn't fit against his skin, and it never had, and sometimes everything was just too much. Thomas backed up so they stood with spines aligned. You're not broken. I am. Thomas turned off his flashlight, and Andrew did too. They stood for a moment in the dark before Thomas said, I like how you are. There's an entire world of ink and magic stuffed inside your head, and I think it's beautiful. I just wish everything didn't hurt you so much. There was an explosion happening in Andrew's chest, 1,000 flowered vines growing around his heart. Thomas never talked like this, soft and vulnerable. Maybe it was easier to whisper sweet and aching things in the dark. Andrew let out a soft, shaky breath, needing to say something back, needing to lean into this gentleness. But then Thomas flicked his light back on and said, We're never going to find your phone. And he slouched off down the path. Andrew followed. He slapped his neck again. I felt like bugs had landed on his back, bloodthirsty little things. I swear I dropped it near here. I was near some clump of trees. I've got news for you about forests. Andrew ignored him. Hey, you know how tomorrow is Saturday? And there's that senior trip to the art gallery in the city? It's not compulsory. I put our names down. Thomas groaned. I wanted to sleep. Andrew shook the sketchbook. We can buy new art supplies. If you draw on a brand new canvas, maybe it'll be different. Another bug dive-bombed his neck, and he yelped, using the sketchbook to thwack at it. I don't think that's... Andrew, what the hell? Thomas ran back toward him. Holy shit, turn around! Andrew's stomach dropped. Slowly he turned. He could feel it then, as Thomas let out a hiss, the way something skittered across the back of his hoodie. The weight of 1,000 tiny bodies pinned to his back, wings beating in a growing hum. Stay really still, but Thomas sounded faint. Andrew closed his eyes. Something pricked him behind the ear, but this time he didn't slap it. Please don't say they're wasps. I think they're, thistle fairies. Thomas, Andrew said, trying to keep his voice even. What the hell did you draw? You wrote about them first. I just sketched those stupid little fairies from your story one time. They're the size of thistles, but their teeth are long and sharp, and they drink blood. They're all over your back. Andrew stayed very still. How many? The humming grew louder, and his shoulder dipped as more thistle fairies landed. They crawled across his back, his neck, their tiny sharp feet nicking skin as they found his collar and peeled it back. He tried to repress the shoulder. Oh, the shudder. He tried to repress the shudder. Every impulse inside him begged to shake, to scream, to run. If they burrowed down his shirt. Thomas, his voice started to crack. There's a lot, okay? I'll get them off you. Just don't move. If all of them bite you at once, you'll... Just don't move. Andrew held his breath. His flashlight froze on the pines in front of him while his bag grew heavier and heavier. He'd been a fool. He thought monsters came in shapes huge and terrifying, not tiny and insidious with wasp stings and spider teeth. This was somehow worse. He could feel them at his ears, wings brushing sensitive skin. The first prick of teeth testing flesh. Could they crawl down his ears? Could they sting inside him? Behind him, a spike clunked to the ground. Andrew tilted his head slightly to see Thomas slip off his shirt and throw it aside. He clawed off some of his bandages from last night and, with a shaky breath, dug his fingers into his own barely healed wounds. Andrew started to cry out for him to stop, but he was cut off by Thomas's choked sob as he punctured his scabbed cuts and dug his fingers in until blood oozed out. Violent and fresh. He smeared the blood across his chest, then took a step back, and another. Destroy the sketchbook, he said. Suddenly the weight on Andrew's back ripped free. The air filled with the humming roar of 1,000 wings, and they all slammed into Thomas. Go! Thomas was already running the opposite way, taking them away from Andrew. Andrew burst forward, his flashlight swinging as he bolted. He shot a glance over his shoulder to see Thomas's bare back covered in thistleberries. The smell of his blood left no need for further invitation. They shrieked, shrill and victorious and starving. A cry ripped from Thomas. Andrew ran. He didn't know where to go, so he flung himself down the path, the woods echoing with Thomas's muffled screams. Their white oak lay ahead. Thickets thinned, and the underbrush turned to ground scattered with leaves. Andrew fell to his knees and skidded in the dirt, flipping pages fast until he found it. Thistleberries. Thomas had done a study of them, dozens of little green creatures with features honed into sharp points, like the tines of forks. One stretched its small, wide to show 2 long needle teeth. They could slip right into a throat, veins reach all the way to a spine. He ripped up the page and started clawing a hole in the ground near the tree's roots. At least he wasn't seeing blood, rich and vile, turning the ground to sickening mud this time. But he couldn't dig deep, not as stones and grit tore apart his fingernails, and Thomas's cries grew more desperate behind him. Andrew tore up every page in the sketchbook until there was nothing left but fluffy shreds. And then he buried them all, smoothing leaves over the top of the dirt. Andrew swallowed. It had to be over now. He punched to his feet and ran back towards Thomas. Not ran. He flew. Thomas, Thomas, Thomas! It took less than a minute to get back, but Andrew's calm had shattered. It was as if the monsters had noticed him being stoic and factual about this horror, and they'd found the best way to slit him open and make him pay. Try to kill Thomas, and Andrew would lose his goddamn mind. The thistleberries hadn't dropped dead the second the sketchbook had been torn up, but no new ones arrived. They still clawed all over Thomas's bare back, his stomach, his shoulders. They burrowed into his ears and climbed his ribs like ladder rungs, and sank their teeth into every bit of soft flesh they could find. Thomas had dropped his flashlight, and he slammed himself against a tree to kill them. He picked creatures off by their wings and crushed them in his fist. Their tiny bodies exploded in green pus that oozed between his fingers. He dropped to his knees and let out a broken sob. Andrew snatched Thomas's abandoned t-shirt off the ground and used it to swipe fairies off his back. He threw the shirt down and stomped on it. Their deaths smelled of cut grass and copper. This sucks! Thomas ripped the thistle fairies off his throat. You shouldn't have done this, Andrew hissed. Someone always has to be the sacrifice. That someone doesn't have to be you. This isn't your fault. Andrew wrapped his hands in the t-shirt and picked more thistle fairies off Thomas. Each one felt like pulling out a pin buried viciously deep. Thomas looked at him then, his eyes pooling with tears. Maybe it is my fault. Maybe last year I made this happen when... Andrew didn't want to hear it. He abandoned the shirt and hauled Thomas to his feet. He shoved him against a tree so Thomas could grip the branches as Andrew pried the last fairies out of his skin. His back was a battlefield. Andrew twisted the last thistle fairy's wings off and dropped it to the ground. He let it writhe around with malevolent waspish howls before he ground it to the dirt with the heel of his boot. Thomas crumpled. Every inch of him looked bloodied and swollen, riddled with puncture marks and lacerations. Andrew felt sick looking at him. The sketchbook is destroyed and buried, Andrew said, ragged. It's over. He knelt slowly, expecting the other boy wouldn't want to be touched, but Thomas flung his arms around Andrew's neck. His sobs came silent, desperate, anguished. Andrew tried to slow his heartbeat. Don't ever do that again. He didn't recognize the hard edge to his voice. It felt like black frost had grown all over his tongue. He dug his fingers into Thomas's hair until his breathing hitched at the pain of it. Thomas didn't answer. Maybe he couldn't. It didn't matter anyway. Andrew was busy listening to the echo of monsters cackling among the trees at this pathetic display of bravery. The monsters knew how weak these boys were, and they found it delightful. Alright, guys, that's it. I promised that I would only read up to 12. So, what do y'all think? I really, like I said, I already repeated myself too much, but honestly, this chapter was full of like excitement and stuff. Stay hydrated. I love the descriptions, you know what I mean? I love how like spooky it kind of is. But anyways, thank you guys for watching and thank you for staying until now. Have y'all ever played Exploding Kittens? I've played it a few times, like with my boyfriend, but I haven't played it in a while. So I think maybe I'll start planning like on my days off. You know, like just ways to like relax recreationally, I guess. If I don't get invited out, you know, because one of my coworkers did try to get me to go out, but I thought I was going to be busy this week. I don't know if I told y'all, but I didn't ask for my 2 weeks at my last job, and they didn't give them to me, so I'm debating, like, continuing doing that. Just because I feel like there really isn't a point, but I'm not sure. You know what I mean? But anyways, I do like to stay for years and years at the companies that I'm in. So, yeah. And also, like, I've been really into horror recently, like, reading horror. I think, honestly, after this book, which I think is gonna finish pretty quick, because I like it that much, I'll either read Behoved or, The Night Witches, I think is what it's called. I'll have to look up more info on that, and I'll leave trigger warnings next time, as well as the age rating and the genre of the book. Cause me personally, I really love dark um dark but not too dark imagery. Like I don't want like gore all over the stuff that I read, like super gory stuff, but I do like a little bit of like darkness there. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if y'all know that, but now y'all do. Your bunny likes darkness, okay? A little bit of it. Just a little bit. It keeps things real. Like how can you know what bright is if you don't know what dark is? You know what I'm saying? Yep. And it's the same thing for like everything in the world, I think. I have a squishmallow back here, and it's a green bunny, a minty bunny. I call it minty. Guys, I saw like My Little Pony stuff, right? And I started seeing clips of Minty come back. Do y'all remember Minty? I don't like if y'all are on the older side, y'all remember Minty. Minty is not in the cast for the new My Little Pony, but she was in the old one, and it made me really happy. It's really cute and stuff. And yeah, honestly, I like watching old stuff that I used to watch when I was a kid. And I've seen like Teen Titans. Do y'all remember that? I really like Teen Titans. And also Powerpuff Girls. Do y'all remember how Bubbles went crazy? I feel like a Bubbles. But I know that when I was a kid I was more of a Buttercup. I was a mean kid. I was I was mean. You grow out of it, hopefully, once you're older. Because you start to realize, like, hey, why am I making this person's life harder? You know what I'm saying? And I almost bought another book, and I was like, no, I gotta save. Because I do gotta save, honestly. Um, I got stuff going on. And also, like, I've been debating, like, you know, selling some stuff to get some extra cash. But, I don't know. Who knows? Honestly, I don't. And I still have all my old uniforms that are dirty. Honestly, if we do the laundry, I don't think I'm gonna wash them until the next time we do the laundry. Just because, I don't see a point. I really don't. Honestly, because I'm not gonna use them again. You know what I mean? And then that way I can have, like, that extra clothes to, like, make art with. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. We'll see. But I am peeling, like, a banana. Or orange. Or potato. Or whatever you want to call it. Yup. But honestly, guys, my day has been pretty good today. I oh, my Tamagotchi died. Dang, that's the first time I've had a Tamagotchi die. I don't know if y'all know what a Tamagotchi is, but I bet it's gonna say new generation now. Yeah, first generation. It says first generation. I had got to like 5 generations before it died, I think, or four. And the last one turned into an old lady. She wasn't able to like have kids or anything. So, yeah. But now I have a new one and it's a girl and I called her Callie. She's really cute. But, you know what? Yeah. Hello guys. I have finished reading, and so yeah. I've been into watching some old shows recently, but honestly, while I was on TikTok, I saw them playing Flowers in the Attic, I think is what it's called. It's a very interesting movie, but it's also like dark because of what happens in it. Are y'all staying hydrated? I hope y'all are staying hydrated. But honestly, yeah. Next time, like, cause I feel like this book is gonna fly by. You know what I'm saying? since I feel like it's gonna fly by, I'm gonna ask y'all what book I should read next. I do have a series to read and stuff. But you know what, guys? For now, I am going to ask y'all, how have y'all been? I hope everyone's been good. Because me, personally, I've been great. I've been tired from working, but yeah, I dance the whole time I work. So it's not because I'm a dance instructor or anything like that. I can't dance, guys. I can't. I really can't. I'm just out here shaking my hips. Shaking my hips. Hell yeah. But I am done reading. So guys, thank you for watching. Please leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe if you have not already. And bye.